you as well. They've got a demo kitchen. They offer classes. They want you to love it the way they love it. They're all about it. So go check them out. It's right there on 50 Highway.
In Overland Park this Thursday.
Isn't this a sports show?
We're going to start, or I'm assuming everyone is starting their shows today, which is a review of this show from Reddit.
Almost entirely.
JB Briscoe can get annoying sometimes. He tries to make me a better person. I'm just looking for sports.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe.
I'm sacrificing life and limb only for you to tell me that I can get annoying sometimes. How dare you, Reddit? What have I ever done that's annoying you? I'm Reddit. I think this show is annoying sometimes. What have I ever done that's annoying?
Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
I'll tell you what, I'm definitely not trying to make you a better person today.
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810.
We have no choice but to launch ourselves out of the blocks here tonight on Almost Entirely Sports. No time to waste. Let's get it going. I'm Joshua Briscoe with Rudy Salazar. Seth Keysor of the Chief of the North newsletter just a little ways away because, yeah, it's a Seth Keysor Tuesday, but it's also a 1 AES hour Tuesday. You just heard the Sporting Kansas City show. On the other side of this AES hour, Suns-Pelicans Game 5. I'm a little nervous, and we're going to get to that hour one way or another, and we're going to do it with a bunch of Chiefs draft talk. Again, mostly with Seth, who we'll talk about all of these receivers with as he's finished out his wide receiver film review of this 2022 NFL draft class. So he's just around the corner. We'll go through his tier list, all out now on the Chief in the North newsletter. If you want to pull that up for later, it's all there, free to read for anybody. We'll go through what he learned about this receiver class and what that means for the Chiefs. In the meantime, I wanted to at least land like one extra draft thought from last night's AES. We talked to our friend Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest, and we were talking about how the Chiefs could be mobile around the draft board. And it reminded me of a couple of tweets that we may have loosely referred to last night, but even in 3 hours last night, we ran out of time. Adam Schefter tweeted yesterday, within the past week, as the draft has drawn closer, multiple teams in the top half of the draft have inquired with others to try to trade back in the first round, per sources. So far, the interest in moving back in Thursday's draft has greatly exceeded the interest in moving up. I will say, a little parenthetical, that's pretty common. It seems like that's how it's almost always seems to go, but put that in the back of your head. From Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, he said, for all the discussion about what this quarterback class lacks, don't be surprised if we see a bit of a late run on round one on Thursday night with one or more trades back in to snag a quarterback. Now, I want you to think about a few things we know pretty confidently. One, we know for sure the Chiefs are currently scheduled to pick at 29 and 30. That's a lock. That is not an assumption. We know that they're not terribly likely to make at least both of those picks back-to-back at 29 and 30. Just from what we've heard from Brett Veach, it just seems relatively likely that they're going to move up. Not that you should believe any of the smoke screens right now, but it seems like moving up for a receiver or an edge rusher would probably be in the cards for the Chiefs. But also, talked about this on Friday and last night, Brett Veach said he thinks there's about 16 to 18 first-round grades on players, and that he really likes the 30 to 60 range in this year's draft class. Well, if all of a sudden maybe you go get one of your top receivers, maybe with that first tweet from Schefter as the implication here that you can move up a little more cheaply than usual. Maybe you're able to move from 29 up to, I don't know, 24 or 21 or 20 itself. Say maybe you move up from 29 to 20 and it doesn't cost you as much as maybe you had previously feared. The Chiefs do have a lot of picks. I don't think that that's a problem in any way, shape, or form. I think it's great they have all these picks. But let's say you move up for an edge rusher, and then by the time 30 is coming around, maybe Pickens, London, Williams, Olave, Burks, maybe Mechie, Garrett Wilson, maybe those guys have all gone off the board. And you're sitting there going, well, okay, I'm not that interested in any of these guys. I'd rather pick again in 10 picks or so and maybe pick up another shot in this range. Well, if you're a quarterback-needy team, you can hop right up to 30, let the Chiefs move back again. Maybe the Chiefs end this whole deal with only one first-round pick, but it's at 22 or something. Not because that move would cost them both firsts, but because now all of a sudden they're picking 22, 34, and then again with their usual picks following that with an extra one in there somewhere. If the Chiefs really do, if Brett Veach is telling us the truth, if they really do like that 30 to 60 range and they really have maybe about 20 or so first-round grades, you could see the Chiefs move up to 20, then move back into the early 30s outside of their 30th pick in day 2 somewhere, early in the second round. You could see those two moves happen for roughly the same cost if you were to play it right. So you see what I mean? Like where whatever you gain from moving back from 30 to 38, I'm picking random numbers, might gain you about what it would cost to move up from 29 to maybe 24. I don't know if that math is all exactly aligned, but that seems relatively close to me. And so that is one thing, even as someone who generally would rather see teams stay where they're at rather than move up or move back and get more picks. If the trade ends up being 29 and 30 for 24, being a player that the Chiefs have a first-round grade on who slides a little bit, even though that's more than their 16 to 18. If you can get a first-round player at 24, and instead of picking 30, now you're picking 38 or even, I don't know, 50. Well, they're already picking 50. Picking 52. If that's in a range the Chiefs like, that is actually a logic that I am very warm to at this point. And we'll talk about that much more tomorrow night. We got 3 hours in an NFL draft preview show hosted by yours truly. We'll get through a ton of that tomorrow night and a ton of this receiver class with our friend Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter. That's just on the other side of this break here on Almost Entirely Sports.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Now it is time for very serious football talk with a man who hates money almost as much as he hates the idea of a healthy sleep schedule.
You will find Seth Keysor everywhere except for in his or your bed, because not only does he not sleep, he's also a faithful husband. So that's important.
The man who has so many children, his wife figured he wouldn't even notice if she bought a few chickens and ducks for the backyard.
We should have an episode where we just have my children appear on the show in ascending order. So we'll do like a minute of Lucas, then 2 minutes of Isabel, then 3 minutes of... Man, I have a lot of kids.
The man who does all of this while being a lawyer in a state that has snow all 12 months of the year.
Until it freezes, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I actually felt very at home driving through southern Iowa. It was snow everywhere, and people were slowing down to like 40. It was adorable. I was driving slowly, but I literally was hanging my head out the window screaming, and that was disconcerting.
It's Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter, The Athletic, and the Times Hours podcast on Almost Entirely Sports.
It's not just a Tuesday, it's the last Tuesday before the NFL draft. It's the last Tuesday ever. So we're here to celebrate that with our friend Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter. You can, of course, check that out at mnchiefsfan.substack.com. You can get all the stuff up there in the newsletter for just $12 a year, which still doesn't feel right to me, but it's what Seth has insisted at keeping the number at. So for $12 a year, you can get all the content there right now. But if you're not sold, the payoff, the crown jewel of all of the work that Seth put in to the wide receiver reviews he's done so far, the ranking, the tier list, it's free for everyone. Everyone can go read it at the Chief of the North newsletter. Seth, thank you, of course, just for the work you've done. You know, thank you for your time. Thank you for being you. And thank you, finally, for making your work accessible to people after just raking them over the hot coals for years.
Well, I thought, it's about time that I finally, after, 3 whole weeks, provide one that's unlocked for everyone. Well, that was, I gotta say, that took me back, that sort of introduction into a segment, that took me back to, our early years together, where, you were just like, oh my gosh, I finally found someone who's willing to be on ESPN Kansas City, who will talk to me.
Just talk to me, period.
About the Chiefs. And you, the unmatched, irrepressible, just like that was great. No, I'm excited. It's been a really cool time to dive into draft content, and I've clearly used all of my brain power to do so, and now I've got nothing left to give. So this should be a fun segment today.
I wanted just to give you a quick explanation of what my computer screen looks like right now as we're doing this. I love a multi-tab situation. I love multiple monitors. I love making 2 windows fit onto one monitor. So right now I've got your story up. I have the wide receivers page of Dane Brugler's The Beast Draft Guide on The Athletic.
Sure. It's a necessity.
It's a necessity. I have, on the other side of that screen, I have the KC Sports Network Draft Guide page of wide receivers open and in front. I got the two of them side by side. I've got your piece up here. I might have my phone out just for some, I don't know what I'm going to put on that screen, but something there.
You should use that to throw up good friend Ryan Tracy's athletic matrix.
Yes, I have that. So this is a true story. I've created because I'm going to be hosting here on 810 Friday and Saturday for our coverage, and I have a little folder where I'm going to need another monitor, but I have a folder that is just called 2022 NFL Draft, and it is on my Google Drive, and it is the Dane Brugler Beast Draft Guide, the KCSN Draft Guide, and Ryan Tracy's Rogue Analytics Athletic Matrix. There's even more stuff to it this year. When we had Ryan on last week and talked about some of that. I've got all of those 3 documents in a folder, so no matter what the Chiefs do on Friday and Saturday, I can only sound so stupid because at the very least I can quote from those 3 sources.
Oh, absolutely. Those are I've got all 3 of those up right now, and anyone who's listening, I mean, really, if you're a fan of the draft, any of those 3 places are just wonderful, wonderful resources of information. Ryan covers the athleticism in a functional way. better than anywhere I've seen. Which that's because he's smart. Like, he knows a lot about like medical stuff and stuff. Apparently, like,
well said.
Yeah, thank you. I thought so. It's like I know words. And obviously the KC Sports Network guys do such a great job. And Dane is, I mean, any one of those other two resources we just discussed, everyone would say that Dane is the epitome of everything when it comes to draft coverage. Everyone knows they're playing for second place. And it's like the one area
his receiver rankings have 40. They go 48 deep.
Yeah, no, it's insane. The things that he knows about players. He's like, he started playing football at the youth level, later enrolled in Cardinal Ritter College Prep, a Catholic high school, and saying it's about Jamison Williams. Well, he's one of 4 children, and it's like, what? Dane?
How did you find this?
Like, how has no draft prospect filed for a restraining order against him at some point? It's probably the one area in sports coverage in general where I see a complete and utter consensus about who is easily the best person to do this very specific thing. So any of those great resources. And then obviously, if you'd like to subscribe to the Chief of the North newsletter, you should. Well, you should even if you wouldn't like to. It's $12. I mean, it's fine. You'd be all right. You won't even miss it. That's my sales pitch now, by the way. You won't even miss
love it.
You probably have, between your couch and your car, even in today's largely cashless society, I bet you've got $12.
I've got digital change now. Like Venmo, you just have like $4 in there for some reason. That's like not enough to transfer it to your bank, but is it just sort of sits there waiting for you to need to send somebody $4. That's your digital change.
Absolutely. And so we, especially if you're interested in wide receivers, and maybe, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, I really want to take a look at least a couple of defensive end guys.
Oh, man.
A couple of edge guys. And to publish tomorrow at some point. I really think I can do it. You have to believe in me.
I do. You're just going to pick the wrong ones. And it's not going to be your fault. You're going to pick someone who's going to get drafted 12th and then someone who's going to be a 4th round pick. And you're like, what happened there?
I know. It's going to be bad. But I'm excited about it nonetheless. And that's the thing with draft coverage is it allows you to fall in love and then get hurt. And then we do it all over again the next year. So but I'm mostly excited that draft week is here. And starting Thursday night, assuming Veach doesn't trade out of the first round entirely, which would be hilarious.
Right. Yeah.
That would be so funny. He'd get, I'm sure, a fortune of picks to do it because you're through that late in the end of the draft, the end of the first round. There's people looking to hop back in. I don't see him doing that. We'll know for sure what players they got. And what I'm excited for, I can't tell. Like, there's a few guys I really want them to draft. But I also want them to draft a guy that I haven't reviewed because then I can review a guy and I know he's going to be a Chief. Whereas, like, I'm watching Drake London. I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome. But, and so it's going to be nice to know what the plan is, Or, like, when they trade for Deebo Samuel and everyone's like, oh, okay, well, that seemed like a pivot.
Well, so first of all, here really quick, I've been saying Treylon Burks' name wrong, and I know this because I'm going to read you read you 2 sentences of the first 2 sentences of Dane Brugler's draft guide, okay, on Treylon Burks.
Oh boy,
Treylon, L-U-H-N. He has the pronunciations in here too, folks. Treylon Burks was born and raised in Warren, Arkansas, about an hour north of the Arkansas-Louisiana border. He's an avid hunter, deer, hogs, etc., and fisherman. Dane, how did you learn that? He's an avid hunter of deer and hogs.
He just knows so much. Like the pronunciations are there for so many of them. George Pickens Jr., who goes by his middle name Malik. Malik? Nah, it's Malik. With his family, grew up in Central Alabama and attended Hoover High. Like, who does he talk to? Like, I get that you can find out where someone was going to high school, but do you need to? Like, this is so much.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
I just don't know. Christian Watson, who has 4 siblings, grew up in Tampa. Oh, are those 4 siblings relevant right now? I'm just looking. I don't know. Started playing football at age 3.
It's always amazing. But
Christian Watson started playing football at age 3. Therefore, I'm in.
Ipso facto. So it's Treylon Burks. I've been pronouncing it wrong too, despite having this as a resource.
Yeah, well, you can't look. You've got to get it. You can't expect to make us all read it. I mean, there's a lot of words here.
Touche.
I'll read it after the Chiefs draft one of these guys. That's what all of these resources between you and the KCSN guys and Ryan and Dane. You guys do all the heavy work, and then you can just tell me what my opinion's supposed to be, which is in fact the payoff of the receiver side. Let's dive in a little bit. Again, this is available unlocked for everyone for free in the Chief of the North newsletter. But you have gone through a whole bunch of these receivers. Couldn't find tape on Sky Moore. Can't wait for them to draft him.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what I'm going to do other than really make people uncomfortable by calling in favors that I've never called in. And
we're gonna get you in touch with the athletic department at Western Michigan. Like, I feel like they should be able to get you something.
Yeah, this feels only fair. And honest to God, maybe I should just Google them and call them. Be like, come on, guys, seriously.
Yeah.
Like,
Hi, my name is Seth Keysor. I cover the Kansas City Chiefs, but also I'm a lawyer, and I want you to remember both of those things as I ask you this next question.
I like it. It's a good strategy. Which, by the way, the limited stuff that I know about Sky Moore, he looks like a legitimate option for them. It's just quality of competition concerns.
And also that he sounds like a Star Wars character. Which moves him up my board, to be clear. I would love to have a player on the Chiefs whose name is Sky with 2 Ys. Like that. Hey, for all the love we've given Dane, the background section for Sky Moore does not appear to give any reasoning for why his name is Sky with 2 Ys. And I sort of would just expect that his parents would have a story or something. Like someone in his family would have a story as to why his name is Sky with 2 Ys.
Yeah.
I don't
know. Sky Ron.
Yeah. His name sounds like a Key and Peele skit a little bit, and I love it. I would love for the Chiefs to draft a player named Sky Moore. Like, that's just, hey, anytime someone asks what I would like the Chiefs offense to do generally, Sky Moore. Like that.
They should Sky Moore.
That's my running backs don't matter is now Sky Moore. And it's how a Neanderthal would tell you to pass. Anyway,
it's Sky Moore.
Sky Moore. Boy, this has been a good segment, huh? I think this has been
the lack of information we've provided outside of where people can provide information can get information besides us has been impressive.
Truly,
but I swear, people, I did hours of film work on 13 different guys except Sky Moore. So
of course, we've been talking about Sky Moore and Treylon Burks, who you reviewed first and was free like a month ago. So, of course, that's why wouldn't we have started with those two guys? No, I want to get some of your big picture looks, and of course, if you want to get into the weeds on any of the particulars on these guys, feel free. If you want to read more about them, Chief of the North newsletter, and you even have in this free version that people can go check out. Like, you don't just this is not just a ranking. You've got your logic behind these guys, but I would like to know a little bit about what your list of tiers kind of means here as you do put these guys into these different lists, and maybe more big picture before we do get kind of in on some of these guys in particular, how you're currently feeling about the options right now. Because I feel like as I have begun to see more mocks come out, look at more things myself, I just sort of don't really buy the idea that there's only going to be 2 or 3 receivers taken in the top 20. I think that number is going to go very, very much higher than that, would be my guess.
I think one thing that I do know is that I accidentally created multiple tiers. I'm looking at this now as we talk.
Yeah.
And I did tier 3 twice. And I'm so mad at myself right now.
So it does say tier 3 on 2 different occasions. So you've actually got 6 tiers. I read this and didn't catch it the first time.
6 tiers. So. And so if I sound distracted, it's
because you're editing.
I'm putting in here, just putting this here.
Yeah.
Before someone tells me I put 3 tiers or tier 3
tiers. Oh boy, this is a tough scene.
This is not terrific radio.
So
but
you edit what you need to do. You hop into your
it's done.
Editing.
I've already finished it. You don't write as
incredible.
much as I do without learning to correct your own stupidity fairly frequently. So here's the big thing for me, for in terms of gauging any kind of prospect group, it's not just about every individual prospect. It's about the group as a whole, how they relate to one another, because what you want to do, the draft, these players, your analysis of them does not exist in the vacuum. It exists in the world of the draft, which means you're not really looking at just this player. You're looking at multiple players that you have multiple chances at. And the reason that would matter is this. Let's say you've got a guy that you really like but don't absolutely love. Well, you really like him, so man, it makes sense to take him late in the first round, right? Or maybe even trade up for him because you know you have a need at wide receiver. But what if there are 7 guys you really like? Then it doesn't make as much sense to trade up. You know, what kind of skill set does this guy you really like have compared to that guy that you really like? And how does that fit in with the entire composition of the team? And so it matters what tier a guy falls into. And that allows you to kind of figure out, okay, is he a tier 1 guy? Well, what does that even mean? So we've got these 3 guys that I think are better than everyone else, but how much better are they? And what does that first tier even mean? And so that was part of the focus of this finalized piece, is really taking the film work that's been done, contextualizing all of it together, putting them in different tiers, figuring out what those tiers mean, and then kind of getting a strategy around that.
So let's just go from the top here, because I do think people are going to want to know, hey, who am I really rooting for here? And this very much tracks with the conversations we've had about these guys. But Drake London, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams are all, I have to imagine, pretty firmly entrenched in that top group for you. You call it the go and get 'em group. How, for those 3 guys, how steep a price would you be willing to pay? In the noting that you're probably just going to get the third of those 3 who happens to be on the board still. I don't know, depending on your cost to move up. But also in knowing where the rest of this class sort of belongs. What price would you be willing to pay? And then maybe a quick version of why those 3 guys just darted to the top of your list.
Sure. And so for me, one of the things to note when you go to like the very end of the article is kind of like, well, what now? If I were Brett Veach, the thing that I noted is that while this isn't a top-heavy draft in the sense that there's really like a Jamar Chase at the very top, it's a little bit top-heavy in the sense in that there are multiple guys that I'm comfortable with taking in the first round. 6 of them, actually. And once you figure that out, it kind of affects your analysis on whether or not you trade up to get anyone. And that's where it becomes important. Like, well, how far above tier 1 or tier 2 is tier 1? And for me, that was kind of there's some distance there, but it's not like it's, this life-altering difference, right? And so because of that, I've kind of, looking at the draft, because again, none of this is in a vacuum. My thought is that 21, the New England Patriots, that 21st pick, that's about as high up as I'd be willing to trade if I were the Chiefs. And that's, because like you said, any one of these 3 guys might fall, but the odds of even one of them, between London, Olave, and Williams being available, the odds of even one of them being available at 21 aren't terrific. The odds of 2 of them are really low. And then, let alone them being there at 29. Because the assumption would be at 22, where the Green Bay Packers pick, so they got to take a receiver this year, right? Like they can't do this. They can't do this to Aaron Rodgers again, can they?
They're going to take a guard. It's going to be so funny.
It'll be like a developmental defensive tackle. And I am going to laugh my butt off. It's going to be so funny. Mostly just like, come on, you can't. How do you keep doing this? So I think that's the spot where you have to trade up if you want to make a choice, because if there's one dude left, I'm guessing that dude goes to the Packers.
Yeah.
The only way that the Chiefs, that happens, in my opinion, is if a team falls in love with Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson goes early, as people think he will, and then there's one other player that teams fall in love with that we're not anticipating. I think that's the only way you have the option of 2 of these guys, maybe even 1, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe some team falls in love with Christian Watson's athleticism or Jahan Dotson's route running or something. That would surprise me. So for me, I wouldn't move up beyond them. The reason being is that tier 2 group which has George Pickens, John Mechie III, who was a late addition when I couldn't look at Sky Moores. So I kind of hope they take Mechie because then I can do a full-fledged review on him.
Yeah, I've got this little paragraph highlighted in green here because I read that. Wait a second, hold on. Where did John Mechie come from? Like I know that some people like him. Again, to cross all of our references here, the KCSN guys seem to like him. Dane Brugler doesn't love him. Ryan seems to like him quite a bit. So Ryan and the KCSN guys all have him at 5 on their boards, which also appears to be where you would. I don't know if these are all necessarily in order, but that is the 5th name you have listed out there. Can you give me a little blip on that? Because the people viewing this through a Chiefs lens all seem to be higher on John Mechie than most of the national analysts and whatnot.
And I wonder if, as a fit in the Chiefs offense, the way he wins in terms of route running, we've watched, and obviously they're different positions, but we've watched Travis Kelce make a career out of being an excellent route runner and knowing where to be. Knowing how to read defenses. So guys like Chris Olave, John Mechie, maybe Jahan Dotson, those guys might have more value with the Chiefs than they might elsewhere.
Yeah.
And then also with Mechie, for me, honestly, you read about him, and everything that you read about him is almost in relationship with Jameson Williams. Mm-hmm. And reading about him, because I don't watch college football, I expected a mediocre athlete, which I would argue like David Bell is. Jahan Dotson kind of, he's not mediocre, but he's like an average athlete. Mechie's not a bad athlete. He's got a little bit of juice. He's got a little bit of speed. He's not obviously as good as Williams in that regard. But I feel like because Williams is so overwhelming in his athleticism, Mechie's become kind of underrated to where acting like he's a bad athlete. And I don't think he is. I think he's one guy who the testing process would have helped because I think his 10 and 20-yard splits in the 40-yard dash would have been really good. I think his 3-cone and that kind of stuff time would have been good. And I think his 40-yard dash would have been below a 4.5. And I think all those things combined, you're like, yeah, no, there's plenty there. So you combine that he's a decent athlete who runs really good routes. He's not quite as smooth as Olave, but he knows how to get open. He catches the ball really well. I mean, he just does the things that it takes to succeed at the next level well, and he's not like a subpar athlete.
Yeah.
And so that to me is like, that's a guy that maybe he's got a more limited ceiling, but I think his ceiling is 1,000-yard receiver and, really, really good number 2 receiver, which there are just not that many really, really good number 1 wide receivers. A really, really good number 2 receiver, we're really saying is a passable number 1. And in the modern NFL where you're running out 3 receivers constantly and often 4, those distinctions don't carry as much weight as they used to. Now is he a good receiver or not? And I think Mechie's a good receiver. So he snuck in there because I didn't have Sky Moore's film to review, and I've got multiple games for him. And so if the Chiefs draft him, even at the end of the first round, I'd be happy with him.
I'm going to go ahead and play the draft guide game one more time. This is from Dane Brugler. John Mechie III, who is one of 5 boys, was born in Taiwan to his Taiwanese mother, Joyce, and Nigerian father, John. Shortly after he was born, his family moved to the capital city of Accra in the West African country of Ghana for 6 years before moving to Brampton in Ontario, Canada. Mechie, who also played lacrosse and soccer growing up, didn't start playing football until middle school when he joined the Brampton Bulldogs. Now, what's your favorite part of that? Because my favorite part for me is that he got the team name of the middle school football team that he started playing for, the Brampton Bulldogs.
Yeah, you stole mine. That's easily the best part of that. That's just like, how? Like, because you can figure out whose people's parents are just by, teams probably ask.
Right.
But hey, who was your middle school team? Like, I just, that's so funny to me.
Also lived in Taiwan, Ghana, and Canada over I don't know, some portion of his life. And then, of course, ended up playing football at Alabama because if you're good enough at football, you just end up at Alabama.
That is absolutely accurate. And you know what? If we're going to dive into the psychology of everything, I like someone that's moved around.
Yeah.
A little bit. Like seen other countries and cultures. Now, I don't know how old he was during any of that time, so maybe none of it sticks. But there's a little bit of worldliness that comes with that in understanding how maybe the world works, how things work. Is that a dispositive thing? No, but it never hurts. Absolutely. It's an extra learning mechanism, and I think a lot of us would be better off if we'd moved a time or two.
I think I think that's great. And also, I just wanted to correct you. You said you didn't know. You do know because Dane Brugler found out. They moved shortly after he was born to Ghana. So he was born in Taiwan, moved to Ghana shortly thereafter, but then lived there until around age 6, and then to Ontario, where he eventually was launched to prominence for his play with the Brampton Bulldogs. I don't understand what you're missing here, Seth. We have all the information right here.
I know. I'm just, man, I can't even remember that. I don't know how he managed to write it all.
Dude, it's so funny to me. I want to just talk. I got to just try to talk to Dane sometime well after the draft, just because this segment here is going to birth that one in like August, where he's ideally not working too hard. It's like, hey, man, I just want to talk to you about your process because you're an alien.
You are just an absolute annihilator of worlds.
So anyway, I'll take the steering wheel back away from both Dane Brugler and John Mechie for just a second. As much as I do love that was, now I'm kind of interested in John Mechie in a way that I wasn't before, both as a person and as a football player. So there you go.
Yeah.
But you also then in that tier 2 again, it's George Pickens, John Mechie, and Garrett Wilson. Wilson's interesting because I would probably actually put him in that lane where some of the, again, kind of just, I keep bringing you and KCSN and Ryan all into a group as just like premier analysts of the local teams. Ryan is still relatively high on Garrett Wilson. You're lower than the consensus. I think KCSN group's probably the lowest out of the crew there in terms of this guy, particularly looking at it with the Chiefs. But nationally, he's kind of been for a long while. I would say he's been the number one guy in this group. He's number one for Dane. I don't want to just make you put your work up against other people. Not my intention. You know this.
Sure.
But I'm curious, I guess, where the discrepancies come from, because in most years I have to think, and you've already explained why this might be different this year. In most years I would have to think that everyone kind of agrees that the number one wide receiver in the class is good, and you would be happy to take him at 29. KCSN gave him a 3rd round grade. And Dane's got him as probably going to be a top 10 pick. That seems like that's where he's probably going to go. So what of that group? If Garrett Wilson's there, I would be a little surprised. Pickens could be though. I'm sorting through this group. I'm trying to find hope for 39 for 29 and 30.
Sure. So like you're saying, like if I had to pick between Wilson and Pickens and Mechie at 29.
I'm just interested in, well, I guess also, that. But it doesn't seem like Wilson's going to be there, and so we don't have to spend a ton of time on what you didn't love from him, but it's different than, again, the national consensus. So I'm interested in why the Garrett Wilson slide there sort of landed around that 5 or 6 on your list. We talked about Mechie plenty, and then Pickens would make me very excited. I would be very excited about Pickens.
I would be, and I'd be okay with Wilson at 29. For me, there's not any overwhelming traits. Mm-hmm. Maybe his downfield route running, because he's able to change direction while sprinting in a way that's very, very smooth and allows him to not lose speed. Mm-hmm. And that's very different than changing direction on short and intermediate routes, right? Where it's more about your brakes and your footwork. Downfield, where you're running, a quick head fake or a quick cut, and then you're going, right? Mm-hmm. The fakes aren't as obvious, but they're just as important, but more so is the ability to maintain velocity while you do it. Because then if the corner bites even a tiny amount, you buy a massive amount of space because, you're sprinting, right? Mm-hmm. He might be the best downfield route runner in the class. And that includes Williams, who's just better at it because he's so much faster. Well, not so much. Wilson is perfectly fast. But I think if we were to go into where my issue with him might exist is what I just said. He's perfectly fast. He's good in the way that he's fast. He's good in the way that he's explosive. He's a decent route runner. He's not great, I think, in contested catch situations, but he's a good to very good yards after catch guy. He's very good at a lot of things. He doesn't have a single overwhelming trait that makes me say this guy has the potential to be a really high-level NFL receiver. Mm-hmm. I think he's got the ability to be a high-level NFL receiver, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
With Drake London, you've got the physical dominance and ball skills combined with better than advertised athleticism. Jameson Williams, the freakish speed and the ability to use it at all levels. Chris Olave, unbelievable route runner. And just incredible nuance for knowing where to be and how to get there. And so you got those things where you can see like a top 5 receiver there, potentially.
Yep.
With Wilson, I think you see maybe a top 15 wide receiver there. Nothing wrong with that. But I don't even know if his ceilings is as high as George Pickens, or even Jalen Tolbert, just because there's not that overwhelming trait. That said, I think he's got a better chance than either of those guys at being a high-level player.
Right.
So that's where you kind of try to find that middle ground there.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And yeah, you stole the thought out of my brain of like, yeah, some of these guys, and I guess this is a high ceiling, low floor sort of thing, but some of these guys you could see being Jamar Chase or A.J. Brown or Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill, I guess. I don't know. I mean, nobody's really. But like, and then you have guys that you're more confident. If you had to bet your life on one of these guys being a starting receiver in the NFL for the next 8 years, that might be different than who you would pick for the Chiefs. So that pushes me back to a big picture thing that I know I've asked you about at some point over the course of this process, but I wanted to ask it again after you've kind of gone through the whole the reps of all of this and have looked at everybody. Has anything changed in your mind in terms of what the Chiefs should be looking for in terms of the types of receivers available here, the variance as you've detailed out all across all these pieces, the variance in guys who are missing certain things from their games or need to develop certain things or maybe are pretty close to a fully formed product at the very top of your list, but has anything evolved right now? If you were going to give your 5-minute pitch to Brett Veach, and you go, hey, this to me seems like the thing that you guys need here. Where have you landed in terms of what the Chiefs need after you've gone through this whole process?
I think, especially with starting this because of the move they made with Tyreek Hill, but then even throughout the process as I watched guys, and this is probably the trap that people fall into very frequently. I guess I wouldn't know. I'm pretty new to the draft stuff. For me, it's more about ceiling. What can they do to really move the needle rather than being and this is going to sound like I'm disparaging a player. I'm not meaning to here, but like a Byron Pringle, who's fine if he's on the field. Yep. Obviously having some off-field stuff allegedly right now, but that's neither here nor there. Yep. It's fine if he's on the field, but he doesn't move the needle, right? It doesn't change anything about what defenses do. I think I realized that what I've seen from the Chiefs over the last few years is they've had some guys like Demarcus Robinson, who's fine. Yep. It's fine having him on the field, but it doesn't change anything. And that's why like some guys that seem like they might have a little higher floors and they'll be fine as pros, like Dotson. That's that guy for me. Now, Ryan likes him more than I do. He thinks he's a better athlete than I give him credit for. But for me, like a guy like Dotson, I'm not sure he really moves the needle. Maybe I'm wrong. He might turn out to be the best receiver in the class. We just don't know right now. But for me, I'm looking more for traits that allow you to really alter the way defenses play you. And that doesn't have to be overwhelming speed or overwhelming ball skills or overwhelming yards after catchability or overwhelming route running, but it should be maybe one of those things. And so that really I've discovered, at least when looking at receivers, I look at the current makeup of the NFL, and I think you can find okay receivers. I mean, the price is getting pretty outrageous. But like the price gets outrageous at the point where you're looking at guys that you think can move the needle.
Absolutely.
And that's where, like, everyone makes fun of the contracts the Jags handed out. They think those are guys that can move the needle as opposed to guys that are fine. And so that's kind of how my process changed going in. I'm generally more conservative with how I review prospects, and I'm looking for a high floor as well because I hate the idea of guys busting. But like with the Chiefs, with their situation, I want a guy. I think Mahomes sets the floor. Whereas these guys can help move the ceiling.
I like that. I like that differentiation because there are a lot of people talking a lot about, well, if you're an elite quarterback, you should be able to make chicken salad out of, you and me playing in the slot form. I don't even think that in this world even, I don't think any of us have outside speed. I don't think any of us have slot quickness or toughness either. So actually we're in bad shape. But if you make that argument, that's one thing. I understand. I don't think that Dallas Clark and Austin Collie were the two best pass catchers of all time, but Peyton Manning made me remember both of their names, right? I understand that concept. but I love the idea. I will be stealing the idea that your quarterback can absolutely set your floor. And if it was you and me out there, that the Chiefs would still win 10 games because Patrick Mahomes was throwing footballs that just stuck in our face masks. I think there's something to that. But to ask, right now, the question's about Patrick Mahomes. If you want to make it about Aaron Rodgers in years past, even as he's had Devontae Adams, making your quarterback try to raise the ceilings of Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle, etc., you are still putting a limitation on what your offense can do there. Like you are asking your quarterback to, at that point, make his guys literally better. Not make them better in the way that lots of quarterbacks talk about doing, but make them like faster or taller, which seems unfair to me. I like that a lot as the short version of me saying, I like your idea there.
Well, and it's worth noting, Mahomes largely sets the floor within reason, right? There's always an example. Well, what if this, that, and the other thing? Sure, yeah, within reason. We should always. That's a caveat before almost every argument. It's like within reason. If you don't take it to what is it? Ad infinitum exaggeration or something. I think that's a Harry Potter spell, not the logical fallacy there. But something absurdium. This is gonna bother me. Anyway,
Wingardium. Yeah, it's Wingardium.
Oh, nice.
No, that's Wingardium Leviosa, Seth. It's Leviosa.
So,
how far do you think you could get through your legal career if you just said Harry Potter spells confidently in courtrooms? Don't actually answer that.
It depends on the context.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There are some times I think you could get away with it. So, the big thing with the ceiling also, because quarterbacks dictate the ceiling, but in a different way. Does the ceiling exist? Mm. And for some guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, some of these really, really, really high-level guys, the ceiling doesn't really exist. And so that's where it makes sense to grab ceiling guys because you can stretch things out farther and become that much more overwhelming. And so that's the big thing. Like, that's Chiefs specific. If we were, doing a draft for Alex Smith, I might value that floor a little more because you want as many floor guys as possible because he may not necessarily be able to take advantage of some of the ceilings that other guys provide. And again, this is just a working theory I have that has nothing more to do with anything than just my opinion. So we'll see how it plays out. But it's definitely interesting. I've been encouraged watching the receivers of this draft. I think they have options here, and that's nice to see.
There are a lot of guys that I would be very excited to talk to you about again in a week. That is the encouraging part of where I'm at. Where maybe it ends up being Sky Moore, who you haven't been able to find the tape of, or maybe it ends up being one of those guys that you don't love high in that list, or maybe we end up talking about who they take in the second or third round. And I can't wait for all of that. But also, I think that low-key, this might have been the most fun, maybe not even low-key, definitely, I think, has been the most fun draft process since Patrick Mahomes. Because we're talking about pass rushers and pass catchers, and we know they're going to take at least one of them in the first round. Last thing, rapid fire, couple quick, I'm going to make it one quick thing. Two quick things. First position the Chiefs draft, and first position that they draft that isn't wide receiver, defensive back, or edge rusher.
I think the first position they draft is wide receiver. I think the first thing they draft that isn't, you said not wide receiver, corner, or edge rusher?
Yes.
I'm thinking interior defensive line.
Ooh.
I think they're going to really hit the defense pretty hard this draft, and frankly, they should. Yeah. Which is a shame because there's some tight ends I really like in this draft that I wouldn't hate them going after. All due respect to Jody Fortson, who I think will be back and do well, but it'd just be interesting to add a few more weapons. But I do think it'll be an interior defensive lineman because they need help.
You didn't need that clarifier on Jody Fortson any more than you needed it on Travis Kelce. It's like, yeah, clearly the Chiefs' number 1 and number 2 tight ends are set for the next 3, 4, 5 years still. And then, whoever they want to rotate in after that is up to them. Check out all the work. Chief of the North newsletter, mnchiefsfan.substack.com. Seth, as always, thank you for being here. Enjoy the draft.
Oh, hey, you too. Thanks for having me.
Any day you can talk to Seth Keysor, it's a good day, but it's also a short day here on Almost Entirely Sports tonight because coming up next is Game 5 of Suns-Pelicans. That is just around the corner. If If you don't know, I am a Phoenix Suns fan, and I'm in a pretty stressful spot right now. But you can make your day even better by just, listening to the game, hearing from Seth. Those are great steps. Would you love to give something beautiful to a loved one? Would you love to answer the question, who gets the ring? Well, today here on Almost Entirely Sports, who gets the ring? I'm giving it to Chris Paul, preemptively. It's our first ever preemptive who gets the ring. Because I am on my knee right now, looking up to see if Chris Paul will have the answer that we need to the question of, are the Suns going to continue advancing through these playoffs? If you have a big question to ask, I would say the best way to do it is with a ring from Ruback Fine Jewelry in your hand. Ruback Fine Jewelry has been serving Kansas City for more than 100 years, and they helped me and now fiance Renee create an incredible custom engagement ring that we both love so much. Literally last night I got home and Renee said something about how sparkly her ring was. That just is something that genuinely happens every day, I think, maybe. It's all completely true. We are so thrilled with what we were able to do with Ruback. And if you have an engagement ring plan in mind right now, go to Ruback, talk to Hal. He has an incredible wealth of knowledge that will either help you create something beautiful from your current vision or can help you create something beautiful starting from basically scratch, which is where I ended up. I didn't have a plan in place. Plus, Mother's Day is just around the corner. Maybe you're saying, Josh, I'm married already. I don't need to put another ring on it in the traditional sense. Well, would you like to get a beautiful gift for your loved one for any reason? They go through the custom process for engagement rings, which is what I did, and I'm so very glad that I did. But also, they've got some incredible, beautiful selections in their shop. And so if you want to get an appointment with Ruback, if you want to just go look around, go talk to Hal, see what he thinks. Ask Hal your questions. He'll make this a fun, enjoyable, uplifting, positive experience for you, even if you're in shoes like mine, which was mostly terrified shoes, not knowing what was going to happen on the other side of this whole process. It was incredible. It was genuinely fun. And we're so proud of where we ended up with the beautiful ring that now Renee has. If you want to make your appointment with Ruback Fine Jewelry, I would really encourage you to do so. You can do that by visiting them online at ruback.co. That's ruback.co. Coming up next, Suns-Pelicans, Game 5 right here on Sports Radio 810. We'll be back tomorrow night from 7 to 10 with a full-on NFL Draft preview show. I'll talk to you at 7 tomorrow night. In the meantime, really hope the Suns hold on to this one. I'm feeling a little bit of pregame jitters. Bye, Mom.
You are listening to Almost